I can't believe how much that's become an issue. And it comes across in many different ways. I've heard, what's going on? It doesn't seem like anyone wants to work. It doesn't seem like anyone wants to work hard. And in some kind of fashion, in some way, shape, or form, that's come up. So my commitment to everyone was to make sure I share that with you guys here today on what it looks like to create a culture of achievement. And by the way, we got Paul from Arizona, Rod. Currently, you're from where are you at right now? Because that tree in the backdrop, I don't know if you're traveling.
No, I'm at our place in Arizona.
Oh, you're in your place in Arizona. Miguel's down in San Diego, right? Oh, did I guess that right? Maybe I didn't. And by the way, I'm allowing you guys not just to talk, but I'm promoting you to panelists. Panelists means you can come in, unmute your cameras. We can have a little dialogue here. So just so you know how that works. John and Patty, if you guys want to unmute and let everyone know where you guys are at. Also, I'm going to be taking inventory on topics you want to cover. So I'm going to start with the one that's been submitted to me in advance. How do we create this culture of achievement? I'm dying to learn how to get more out of my team. Another way this has come across has been like this. I'm aware of the economic condition of inflation, and I'm aware my EBITDA, my profits aren't staying the same. And I need to learn how to mitigate the risks of my profits being eaten away by not increasing the efficiency within my company. So I'm going to cover that basic philosophy of how we handle that with staff as well as with clients. Yes, with clients. If you caught one of these breakthrough sessions before, Nate Keevan said how he cut off his bottom 20% of his clients and increased his top line revenues because he believed spending less time with all of his clients, I think he said his children causing him problems, allowed him to double down on those that he served most, made him even more money by doing less. So I'm going to address that here today, but I got a little, I got the small version. I don't have my big 8.5 by 11 because I tried that before and it was just too obnoxious. So I found the mini me version. And is there anything you guys want to make sure the team can address? Because I might not address it. Someone else may have already solved this problem for you in the past. If you can solve any challenge right now outside of the culture achievement, you can give me a yeah, hey, that's great. But do you got anything else you guys want to make sure you address here today? We'll make sure we knock it out of the park.
I'm good on my end, Ted.
Paul's good. All right. Well, hey, don't forget, if you have
I'm
a
good.
topic you can contribute to, you pull from a different place for when you're looking for a breakthrough and then when you're sharing with someone else. You elevate something inside of you when you're sharing with someone the best of yourself and your learning curve. And when you enter in that new place, Paul, you even cover things that you may have never uncovered by seeking, but by contributing. It's just a different place to operate from. I see Miguel's nodding his head, so you know what I'm talking about. He, as a professor, you might be able to articulate that better than I can. So, feel free. I took a soundbite of some of the brilliance you shared last week. I don't know if you saw it. I didn't tag you because unless you tell me you want to be tagged, I don't do that. So I don't know if you want the world, but I can't hear you, by the way. I can hear my speaker, but I can't hear your microphone. Patty, do you have something you want to make sure we tackle here today?
I just want to say hi. Happy to be with you. And it's always good to be around people with high energy who are focused on really doing good for the world.
Well, the best come to the business breakthrough community. I mean, really, I'm blessed. I think I have the best job on the planet. I get to be surrounded by brilliant entrepreneurs solving world's problems on a daily basis. I mean, it's a pretty good gig. I mean, you become who you hang around. So this is very good for me. So Patty, thank you for being here and contributing. Is there anything that you want to knock out of the park today, Patty? If not, tell everyone where you're from minimally.
Is that what you said? Did you say introduce myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was an entrepreneur. When I was in my 20s, I started a company and grew it to 600 employees. It was in human resources, staffing, recruiting, contract engineering. And I sold it in 2006. And the buyer and I had aggregate sales of 500 million at the time. And then I watched that buyer grow from 500 million to 1.8 billion in the next 2 years. And my head exploded because I thought I knew so much about building businesses and being an entrepreneur.
You did
and
know
being
how to
successful,
grow.
right?
Growth and scale are two different things, right? It's everyone's using the word scale like they mean growth nowadays. You notice that, Patty? Like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, such
Even
a
though
different
these guys, their website said they were in the same business as my website, but they weren't. That CEO is focused on totally different things than I
Is she
have
cutting
been
out or is it
focused
just
on.
me?
I've been focused on caring for my customers, managing my team, right? But that CEO was focused on making acquisitions. So you get what you focus on, right? So he grew,
Yeah.
grew. But it also wasn't a perfect story. So what I'm always looking for is more unicorns, but unicorns who want to make a difference and not kill themselves in the process.
Well, you know, it sounds like you love helping them get to that $125 million level so they can get an IPO, an exit of some way, shape, or form. And then once they're at that plateau, it's a different strategy. That's where your venture capitalists are going to come into play and say, yeah, they're looking at that because they do mergers and acquisitions. Touched in on an old client. He came way back in the day when he was working at, what was the old electronics store we always went to? If it was electronic, we went to the store. It was everywhere like Walgreens, but it's totally gone now. What was that called?
Radio Shack.
Radio Shack. Radio Shack. So he was at he was doing radar detectors. He sold them into Radio Shack. That was something we helped him with. And he remembered us. And then I sent him a text a decade later. And then he had moved over to Best Top, which if any of you guys have Jeeps or now Ford Bronco, they have a soft top. That's all made by Best Top. And so that got me to SEMA, which is going on right now, Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association. What a wonderful event. That company, they found a new gear, Patty. They've been in business 100 years. And what they learned is how do you really take care of a very specific clientele base? And I say, if you've yet to crack your $10 million mark, if you're growing really fast, find a way at 10 million to create raving advocates. Because if you go from 10, 20 to 30 race by just buying clients, you're going to have a problem because you're going to hit a brick wall real fast. So if you want to be able to continue to grow by not just buying those clients, you want to be able to master that by making a brilliant product line right around those 10 millions. Because you get into the multiples. So you're getting 20 and 30 millions. Now you're stacking on top of what you already built, which is pay to play model. Like you're only acquiring clients because you paid them to be there, meaning you paid through marketing to convince them to spend money with you. So Patty, you brought up a really good point. There's different requirements for different levels of each business. So different requirements at your first 1 or 2 million than it is at that 10, 11, than it is at 25, 30, than it is from 50 to 100 million, 100 to 125. These are all like typical plateaus people get stuck at. Is there anything else you guys want to make sure we address here today? Otherwise, I'm going to pull an old whiteboard and I'm going to pull a marker out and we're going to talk about creating a culture of achievement. Anything else you guys want to make sure we tackle here? If not, we'll let it happen organically. I got an empty.
No, all good.
I got an empty yellow notepad. This is great. This is easy. This is going to be the easiest one of the day. All right. So when I went on that rant about, hey, it doesn't seem like anyone wants to work nowadays. Hey, it doesn't seem like anyone wants to work hard. How do I create a culture when it got past me knowing everyone's name? Now, when I walk into my facility, I see people I've never met. And you're trying to figure out how do I keep them motivated so you can have efficiencies in your company, let alone minimally trying to mitigate profits being eaten up by inflation and recession. Is anyone else feeling that sense, or did everyone else want me to cover that and they just didn't show up here today? Are you guys laughing because that's relevant or no?
No, it's definitely true. It's God, if I had an easy solution to it, I would have helped all my clients with it before now.
Yeah.
I
You may have an easy solution to it, but
Listen,
we're going to find out in a minute.
I'm an expert at hiring, right?
Yeah.
Earlier this year, I hired an assistant who also happened to be a lawyer, you know, the best educated assistant I ever got. On September 15th, she disappeared and I haven't heard from her since. It's like, seriously, this can't happen to me, right? It happens to everybody right now, right? So it is a different time. We kind of created a little bit of a monster with all of our incentives. And now we kind of got to
Is she
that back
muting out
probably
every
that
now and
Yeah,
then?
pendulum
or
has
is
to
it
swing
just
back
me?
in order to give us.
Yeah, Patty's cutting out.
Okay, I was like, is this Ted's like technology day? So every now and then, if you cut out, if I ask you to repeat yourself, Patty, it's just because we get about 80% of what you're saying, or at least I've been able to pick up on it. So okay, well
That's
then,
Elon Musk. That's Starlink.
oh, you got Starlink? I learned about Starlink in the middle of nowhere. I went to go detach from technology. I took my son into the middle of the high desert of Oregon. We find ourselves on the plains where this beautiful woman I met at SEMA, by the way, that woman, when I said I went there, she's known as the fastest female on the planet. She passed away doing a test in a rocket car. I can't remember how fast she went. I think I'm going to guess like 700 miles an hour. Anyhow, was it Jenny?
Wow.
Combs. I remember seeing her face. I remember her standing in front of the Warren trade show booth. And anyhow, I'm sitting in the middle of this place and I'm thinking this is going to be bliss. We got absolutely nothing to ourselves. Well, my buddy went camping the night before. My boy loved the fact that he had that Starlink and he could stream 120 megabytes per second downloads in the middle of the desert. So he left it with my son and he breaks it up. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going online, baby. I was like, no. But it's a wonderful blessing. I was literally in the middle of nowhere and we had high-speed internet. So, well, let's just see if you do or don't have this covered. Something easy that can help entrepreneurs and clients, or maybe your students, if that is the case for Miguel as a professor. I'm going to see if I can get this down into a place to where this.
I do have one other issue that came up today, actually, with a client whose husband, the company is about 20 million. They're very profitable. They're 7 years old. They're in the construction industry, and the husband, she's the general contractor and the majority owner. However, her husband is also very involved, and he was a contractor before she was. She says the husband has control-itis. And I am kind of at a loss as to what else to suggest to her about anybody that has control-itis. I just simply went online. I found a couple of articles about.
I like how it almost seemed like a meme. You said I went online to go to get the solution, but anymore, that's such an honest place of where we go for this. Okay, well,
Right.
So I'm
we're gonna hot seat the control-itis thing because
Ted.
because
Yeah.
I don't think she's going to be the only, or I'm going to be the only one who has a comment on that. Yeah,
Hey,
Rod?
Ted, you remember when I introduced you to that Myers-Briggs guy, that interkinetics fellow?
Yeah.
That might be a free thing, Patty. Can I give her you care if I give her the website?
Of course not. But we're going to give that some time. So,
Okay.
all right, well, let's cover the
Go ahead.
fundamentals here on managing expectations of excellence within an organization. At any given organization at any given time, someone's going to have some kind of goal, right? So they're going to have some kind of just fundamental what they're shooting for. But more often than not, what they end up with is they say they want their one thing. So give me one thing you or one of your clients wants if you're a coach or consultant. Give me a common goal you've heard, a key performance indicator that everyone's focused on. Someone give me any arbitrary goal. It could be your own or of your clients. I don't care. Give me one.
I want to get more clients to come into my funnel.
Okay, great. And is there so more clients? So couple things. The word more is the greatest lie ever told because it insinuates more-itis. The more of anything is going to solve my problems, right? Itis is an inflammation. It's a disease. You definitely don't want to dance with that devil. So this is where when you're looking to manifest any kind of outcome in a goal, you want to be specific, right? That way we can get fundamental goals. Remember the specific goals?
Yeah, SMART, the SMART model.
Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, things like that. So if we were just going to do that, what type of
I want to increase my top line funnel by 10%.
Great. So now they
This
say
year.
10%. Now, still not smart, but it's 10% increase, right? This is what they want. This is 10%. And it's an increase So we haven't looked at the time bound. When will they get to 10%? And when is that measurement of client acquisition acquired? So the more specific you get, the more likely you're ever going to hit a goal. But
Correct.
this is where most people spend a lot of their time, is just on that goal. And then what they do, I think I heard Patty say, you got team members and they start underperforming, right? So what do you do when they underperform? Let's just say they get this other number. If 10% growth is what they want, what's a minimal acceptance level people will put up with? If you heard someone say 10% emotionally, what feels like, yeah, that's something I'd love to have, but I'd be okay with, give me another number.
5.
5%. Saying, okay,
But it's
I will.
it's not the top line, Miguel. I think what we want is the net, not the top line. Who cares
Well, the
about top
net,
line?
as a consultant, I can't manage unless they hire me full time and they can't afford me. I can't manage the bottom line.
And that's not always the statement that they want the bottom line. That is not true. A lot of new
Correct.
startups, you saw Facebook do this for a long time, where they were growing fast. There, people that had ownership, their board wanted market share. They'd rather go and make it less expensive to acquire clients and it not be as profitable. But that's now gone away. That's why any of you guys that lived and died based on Facebook, you feel like you're dying now, because the prices have shot up. They haven't really haven't shot up. I think the market generally was being tampered price-wise. It was being satiated by the board members desiring growth over profitability. So let's not muddy the water. We're just going to say 10% new client acquisition is a true goal. 5% is okay. What do you think the real thing is? What would make someone ecstatic if that was their goal? What would make them ecstatic?
20%.
Okay, so 20%. So up here, 20%. Now, here's what happens. In some cases, we heard Patty allude to, well, hey, I'm not getting the results I want. So this is what Candy Ass Society says. You know what we're going to do? When you show up and you start hitting 5%, because that's when I start paying attention. You clearly missed our mark. We had growth rate that was coming up at least 10%. We expected nothing but continued 10%. And then you mismanage my expectation. What do? Well, let's just go see what kind of incentive we can give them today. Because we learned that if our staff is engaged, they'll be happy. So I go to my staff and I do a survey and I go, what will make you happy? They want better chairs. Let's buy them some chairs. They want to feel recognized for sucking wind. Yay. And they go out and they create this environment and they wonder why their competition is being eaten up by our clients on a regular basis. Because happiness is not a derivative of a thing given to them. It's from within that they know they've done a great job. What's that old, who did that quote? I'm thinking of the football quote. It was like, nothing's greater than, laying exhausted in your, sweat and blood at the goal line.
Could have been Lombardi, but I'm not sure.
There's a really good Lombardi quote that I'm butchering right now, but it basically says nothing makes it more joyful. So what we talked about on a previous business breakthrough community session was I did a hot seat about this guy. His problem was collections. He had bad debt issues, or they come up occasionally. And he says, I just cut my clients off. And one of the problems I said is you're just not communicating enough. Same thing I think is happening in the marketplace where we want to get more from our team is communicating clarity on what we even want. What do I want? Want more new clients. So that's very vague. Well, I want 10% more new clients. In what period of time? Because if you want 10% of clients, wanting it means you're always never going to have it. If you want to manifest this in your life, you can't want it, because if you want it, you'll never have it. You'll only ever manifest a wanting of it, and it'll always be right outside of your grasp. So you get specific when you're going to attain it. So you get specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound minimally, but you got to start communicating these lines in the sand. And you say, here's what we're going to do. This right here is will do. You will get 5% new prospective clients. Insert department accountable to that KPI. You should do 10% number increase of new clients. And you could do 20%. And so how do you make this come to fruition? Well, one, where does the incentives go? Down on the red line or up on the green line? Where do we know we should be putting incentives if we want a culture achievement? What do we
Green line.
want to reward?
Green line.
Yeah, up top. This is meeting and exceeding expectations. This line up here. This is past meeting and exceeding. So up in this range, you can reward that with your dollars. What's another way you guys have used ways to acknowledge a reward? Now I'm opening my mouth and saying it. What's another way you've given some kind of thing?
Trips.
Trips.
Vacation.
One of my
Time
clients-
shares.
One of my clients has taken their top producer to the Super Bowl. That's one hell of a trip, by the way. 2 people going to Super Bowl. Trips, vacations, President's Club, right? Going to Hawaii, President's Club. What else? How
Well,
about
just recognition. I think recognition is very powerful, and
give it a name, that recognition. Let them
not
earn
everybody
the
gives as
badge on
much of
their
it as they
arm.
could, and it's free. It's free. Mhm.
Oh, she broke up there. So I heard recognition is what I heard. So they want to get the badge on the arm. People will literally die for that stripe on their arm. So give them an opportunity to do that. So that might be called President's Club or Inner Circle or Winner Circle, whatever you call it, give it a name so everyone can have
Mhm.
pride that they've accomplished it. And what you're
Mhm.
going to have is any given time, this is your top 10%, your top producers statistically. You want to make sure you're at a given time, you're looking at this saying, okay, here's my 10%. Here's my middle 70% of my team, right? And here's your bottom 20%. And so let's springboard down to the I will, you will. You see, this is a language, just be able to articulate what's going to be expected. You will produce that, it has a double entendre on it. So when someone misses the mark and falls short, how do you reply in the current marketplace? What do you do with your team? Who wants to speak up? John, Paul, you want to give an example of what you guys do? Karen, you can unmute or text us if you need to. John is going to do this remotely, so if he wants to text, feels free. Hey, Paul, what do you do when someone misses your expectations at work? Do you got a technique of how you manage that?
I mean, in my organization now, it's a discussion. Performance management and previous, where we performance manage them out or promote them to the customer.
Okay, so let's talk about what that communication could look like. Performance improvement plan. Have we all heard of the PIP, performance improvement plans? Performance improvement plan is exactly that. Hey, I want to acknowledge that over this last month, our goal was to hit 10%. We gave incentives for you to be able to do 20% growth in new client acquisition. And we drew a line in the sand that made it clear that anything less than 5%, that's it. Like that's where you got to draw that line, right? So that's a minimal acceptance level. So one thing is make sure you mitigate your risk is you write them up officially on that. This is where you send them that paperwork and make it clear and start managing expectations in writing. So what's the first thing you do on the PIP? Love. You spent all this time trying to recruit a talent. You don't want to go up in their grill and get all negative on them. I can't believe you. Why didn't you? Right? First thing we want to do as leaders is take personal accountability and what did we fail to give this person to be able to hit that 10% mark? They're obviously failing. They must need some kind of training. So first thing you'd want to do on PIP, 1, provide training. Next month, boom. What do? They hit 5% again. They failed to move. What do? Next time, training plus a negative consequence. Now you're doing basic associative conditioning. Hey, you know how this environment is. We're a culture of achievers here. We are growing. And for us to grow, our people need to grow with us. And that means the expectations of your work, your performance is expected to improve as well. This is the second time we've had a meeting, and you know, and you slide the paperwork, they're going to acknowledge it, and you have some kind of stuff. So maybe you're sent home for the day without pay, or maybe you're like, I don't know, what's a negative consequence you guys have? Isn't just maybe, how about if you're willing to acknowledge them when they're great? How about the opposite? Patty, what if in your team meeting, you don't candy coat it, you get honest, you show the board, you show who's up here in 20% land, who's in 10%, but you transparently show who's in 5%. Isn't that motivational enough? Often it's just by being seen as the schmuck because you're the only one down here on the board.
Right.
Miguel's example of 10 people trying to better market, and one of them's down here at Mr. 5%. Or she's at 5%. And by the third time, then it's up or out, right? So this whole way you're training them up, or they're choosing to step out. Now, the third time you meet with them, you can give them the dismissal papers. You've communicated well in writing every step of the way. You articulate your goals. You had them sign off on the goals that they said they can meet, and their goals are tied to their personal outcomes. Always, if your goal is only what you want, and you haven't started recruiting team members that you trust enough to reverse engineer the goals towards what they desire, you're still self-focused. You're still acting like a $1-2 million operation. Very sophomoric if you're dictating goals to your team still, because you've yet to be able to move away from the I's. You yet to even move into the we as a team, what we're going to accomplish. And by the time, you know, like Patty sold her business, she did a brilliant job taking that company. Someone else moved it from what we are capable of doing and loving on our clients. They took it to a whole new level and said, we're focused on our end consumers in a way that it's all about them, and found a way to just grow it even further than she ever even thought possible. So performance improvement plan. Who here has an effective performance improvement plan being used consistently within their company to at least manage or mitigate the minimal acceptance level turning into a new standard? Who's got that in place now?
Well, I have them. I've been using them for my whole life, but I don't have a team now. I'm basically solo. So, but I do have them for my clients to use.
Mm-hmm.
So today I'm a business coach. So that's the difference. Yep. But hey, Ted, I'm pretty sure that Miguel said that he wanted to raise his input in the top of his funnel by 10%. Is that what you said, Miguel?
Yeah, 10% was the goal to improve current levels.
So are you going to circle back around to that, Ted? Because that's different than you and I talking about this, unless Miguel has a big team feeding his funnel.
Miguel's given a hypothetical as a professor for all his clients. He's also a coach as well. I assume Miguel's just, he's regurgitating what his clients have told him on a consistent basis.
But Ted, let me say this to you, and for the benefit of everyone, I've run a 1,500 person organization. I have had performance improvement. I have had everything that you just stated when I was in a corporate setting. I don't do that anymore, but that's knowledge.
The second coach here says, I'm now a coach or consultant. I don't have that. You know, that's what environments like this can become for you. You know, that's what, you know, having a coach could do for you. There are things you can do in your organizations to where it doesn't have to be a board. Like when you're at 125 million, you're doing your IPO, you got a board. What they're doing is constantly telling you what you can't do. They're trying to mitigate lawsuits. But on your race up to that $100 million mark, if you have the passions to transform society or your group or your clients, you can start getting people around you. Classic masterminds, the language I'm using from this book, Think and Grow Rich. You can call it whatever language you want. You become the product of 5 people you hang out with, whatever language you want to call it. I don't care. Everyone gives it a new name just so they can charge $25K for it. But like an environment like this is free or next to free, and our circles are inexpensive. Minimally, you can participate consistently, so you can have someone raising that standard. That's something I found in, we have our business mastery transformation program. Rod's gone through it a couple times. Is that when you get to know the same entrepreneurs and they get together on a regular basis and they say, hey, I know what I need to do, and they say it out loud as a conscious commandment, they're just not going to show up next week and not do it because they're going to look like a schmuck. Like everyone says, I was up till, midnight last night because I knew I had to, I knew Ted was going to ask me. Like there's power in that performance improvement plan. But as you're managing teams, essential just to mitigate this. So the things we've identified so far is just clarity around your goals. Make sure it's not goalitis. Just because you grew 5% last year, top line pipeline of new prospective clients, doesn't mean your best answer is just more-itis. Let's go from 5 to 10. That's no fulfillment is ever found. You need big passions drive big, your big visions have big passions. You want to be able to tie that to that why. We want to, if we're going to a team and we're going to cite any goals with each staff member, each person's motivated by different things. Rod was talking about Myers-Briggs. Some of you guys might use subconscious influencers in print, or some of you guys use DISC, whatever you use, or maybe Leary Rose. Any of you guys are familiar with him? John Leary, and you leverage the Rose. Whatever motivates. Find a way to reverse engineer that with clarity because it's towards the attainment of their own personal goal. That way they take ownership on it. I'd say the reason people are struggling is times were good. Things are meeting what they wanted, what used to be their minimal acceptance level. Like it used to be, I'd be happy with 2%. Then it was 3% and then 5%. And they got 10%. So they said, well, that's our new goal. And then that creates apathy because the pain's gone. And then what happens is you stop rolling out performance improvement plans until you have to fire someone, right? Then suddenly PIPs aren't to improve anybody. PIPs are paperwork that says, I'm going to fire you. And then we let go of this because these are the first ones to leave you if you create an apathetic environment because you start trying to appease people that are down here complaining. It's very simple. Armchair psychologists could figure this out, let alone the greatest minds in the world. Will talk about fundamental associative conditioning and what it means, Pavlovian style, to be able to condition in lasting change. But this is not just for your team. This could be for your clients. Nathan Keebman put that in my mind, and I want to bring that to your attention. You could take these same KPIs, take them off an internal client, and this can go for your own you're not your own teams. It could be a client thing. Like give an example. What makes a better client than all clients? Hey, Paul, you're in a place where you're going to unmute and tell me what's the difference between your platinum clients, your gold clients, and your silver clients. What's an absolute platinum client look like? What makes them this upper tier status?
For me, it's commitment to, what our goals are. So as we're working together, if I find them that if they just want one-offs, they're complainers, they're the ones that are sending the most emails. Those are the ones we don't want to work with. So we'll see those down.
So complaining down here. So they're verbally complaining, right? And then what does when you say they're in alignment with your goal, how does that look or feel in the business? How does their commitment get expressed? How do you know if they're committed? What's that look like for you?
I mean, they'll make the appointments. They're there for the calls. They're the ones that are booking the appointments to see me. They'll ask for advice on things, and then they'll actually do what's needed when you give them the advice on it. Whether
you're hungry,
answering,
and they show up and they're playing full out, right? Yeah. So here's what Nathan was basically saying. He goes, I took my 20% and I just let them all go. He goes, what I really did is I raised my standards. I basically said, this is no longer a will. This goal is now my you will do. This is your should do. And they created a whole could do status. And they just raised standards. As trite as that sounds, I recommend you raise your standards, all these lines. So in the midst of your recessionary period, in the midst of inflation, if you're doing some calculations with your CFO and you realize, holy moly, our profits are not going to be the same just for those effects that are outside of our control, well, then you've got to raise your standards to even tread water. And so what he shared was profound. He goes, letting go of my bottom 20%. What we found was he tracks his staff members. He's got, what did he say, 36 staff members? and he has a tracking tool on their time and what projects they spend. They found out that these bottom 20% was eating 80% of their sales development reps, customer service reps. They have a whole bunch of departments that are pretty much flat expenses. They're just staff members, as you guys know, have a tendency to be the largest expense a company has. And that largest expense was being eaten up by these bottom 20%. So he just simply got rid of them all. And this whole better tier that didn't exist before, they were able to create some of them into it and to go start finding and spending quality time nurturing those better tiered clients that exceeded their previous expectations. And it's transformed his life. His profit margin shot through the roof. So tough times caused him to do a thing he knows he should have always done. And if you guys find that to be interesting, we won't do the thing we need to do when times are good. And sometimes we'll cut off the things we know we should. Like, Paul, have you ever gone back to your staff and said, man, I can't believe we're still putting up with that client who complains so much?
Or employee.
Or
right?
That means we've not raised their standards.
Either way, right?
That means we've not raised their standards.
Yep.
Right? I went to go lower my standards last week. I said it out loud. I'm so desperate for hiring, I'm going back to salespeople that I let go because they didn't meet my standards. And then I realized, why did I say that? It's total scarcity mindset. I was total just fear that I was not going to keep up with the momentum and the demand that I've got going on right now. I just don't want to lose the positive momentum that came off the back of releasing a new edition of the book, new marketing initiatives, new staff members, etc. And all it took was one interview with one of those people that I said can't hack it. I scratched that whole initiative, apologized to my staff, and I'm now telling you, I make mistakes every day. I'm just owning it, and I want to say it loudly and proudly, so I just don't go back and do that stuff again tomorrow. So I say that to you so you can all keep me to this standard. Don't lower them, raise them. But when I was using the word candy, that's what I was alluding to, where people, leaders, what they do is they rush to the bottom to appease them in an effort to beg them to stay and play in the midst of the great resignation, versus inviting your staff to grow, because progress is the real word. If you see someone progressing physically, emotionally, like my kids are at Tony Robbins' UPW event right now, just sent them off this morning. Those are happy people. My children are perfect examples of, you're not happy because you're given a thing. Like they've been given a lot of good things in life. But you'd be surprised how my straight A student daughter who came home and she said, Dad, she was talking about a class and the teacher was like, oh, don't worry, Remy, you're going to do great on that grade. And she goes, well, actually, no, I'm concerned about that one. And he goes, why? No, you're doing fine. She goes, no, actually, this is my worst grade in school. And he goes, what? Like in godsmacked manner. And I go, what? Why was he so godsmacked? She goes, well, it's because I have a 97. Her worst grade is a 97. Exactly, Patty. I had my fair share of D's and C's and stuff. I was too smart to do homework. No, she wants to get the 100 plus, which I didn't think was plausible. She's like, no, it's these, classes, college credits, and they give bonuses and blah, blah, blah. And
yeah,
raising
used to
standards.
Remember in the olden days, it used to be when 4.0 was a big deal. Well, now they all get 4.9s or something.
I don't even know. I didn't even know there was such thing as a past of 4.0. But my point is progress equals happiness. I can't believe she can be so depressed and so frustrated with her life when life's going so good for her. So
give that kid a break. Get her to relax.
Well, it's get her to relax to a classic achiever. Like, did any of you guys raise achievers? Like that's just saying you're not good enough, that you don't chill like your brother, right? Because that's her identity. Say, hey, just stop being you. Can you just go be some other loser for a minute? Like that's how she hears that. So for her, it's, you can't be a prophet in your hometown. Any of you guys ever notice that? As a leader, this is where coaches and consultants have come into favor so often, is the CEO may be saying a thing forever and no one ever wants to hear it until suddenly an expert, who's anyone who carries a briefcase, lives more than 100 miles away from home, and has something to share. And it's profound. So that's why I can't say it anymore, because they've now tagged it. They call it, I've been TM3'd. They text each other, they talk to each other. You know, they're like, oh, I've been TM3'd. Daddy took his work home and he flexed on me and he told me some enlightenment stuff. So they dismiss it because it's too good. So it's so good, it must be TM3'd. So I just sent them packing to Tony because they don't know Tony. They're going to hear him drop the F-bomb and like, they'll just think he's cool. My son who's driven by certainty has no clue he's walking on fire. He doesn't know. I'm not saying I lied to him. I just didn't tell him the absolute truth when he asked about the fire thing. I just did. These aren't the droids you're looking for when we move topics. So who's got any thoughts, questions, or great breakthroughs you've had in your business experience by simply raising your standards or leveraging a performance improvement plan to invite people to consistently step up or step out? What's some of the great breakthroughs you guys want to share?
I'll share something real quick. So
Thanks.
in my business model, we had train, transfer, terminate, 3 T's of Miguel's. And one of my teams gave me, you could probably see it, you can't read it over my shoulder, to Miguel's 10 commandments in relationship to performance management. And I adopted Ken Blanchard's SL2 model, situational leadership model that works consistently. When I've met people that tell me it didn't work for them, I
just
generally
didn't
said
work
that you didn't work it properly. So because it works, I've used it for 40 years. But I do want to share this, especially for those of you who are in growth mode, hiring, including you, Ted. I've got about 4 certifications in a variety of tools. So you've got the cognitive tools, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic. Depending on your business model, you either need people who can do that or not. So let's assume that you need somebody that can add 2 + 2 and get 4 instead of 5. So you administer a cognitive test. It gives you an answer. You hire, or you move them along your hiring process from there. Then you get into the affective, of which I've got 4 certifications in the affective, which is DISC, MBTI, Strengths Finders, and Predictive Index. All of those are affective. They mean nothing to me today. I go into the world of conation, and for those of you who live in Arizona, Kathy Colby, who is the person whose tools I use, is headquartered in either Mesa or Tempe, Arizona. That's where I was last week with 150 certified consultants. Here's why I like conation. Conation answers the following question for me, Ted. It answers the question of, if I hire you, how are you going to perform the job if free to be yourself? That's the key answer. If free to be yourself, how do you perform? And we've all been in leadership and management and owned businesses before. If you hire the right person who is self-motivated, you never have to kick them in the butt to do anything. The problem is we're not hiring the right profile in most instances, and it would be helpful. I would encourage each of you as owners to take your own Colby and experience it and determine for yourself how that might serve you.
Yeah.
Enough of a plug on that tool.
Well, it's a great tool. Love it. I mean, Rod's, he started earlier talking about,
Miguel.
he
you
was
are
ranting up. Yeah. Yeah. You're preaching to the choir to some degree for some people, but others listening to this on the podcast or at other times may be profoundly impactful for them. And as well as they're like, okay, I hired the right person as they're growing really fast. Well, it's not the top of the hour. Hey, Elliot, I love you, buddy, but I'm going to have to get back to you at the top of the hour. I'm in the middle of my podcast. Jump on if you want.
Miguel, what did you say? Conation is.
Yeah, Kathy Colby discovered or
Spell that one.
rediscovered.
I haven't heard of that. Is that
CONATION. CONATION. And since what's your numbers on Colby? What's your MO?
Oh, I didn't recall it. I just remember I'm a quick start, and that was kind of like, duh, I knew that. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
But not everybody's a quick start.
Right.
No, not everyone is. Yeah, it's great. We did a sales kickoff. Not a sales kickoff, company-wide kickoff. We first started with those that own the company have financial vested interest, and then its management team. And we just separated people based on their natural tendencies into little quadrants in the room. And it was just great to be able to say, okay, let's talk about how this plays out. So everyone can just kind of laugh about it because it wasn't really safe to say, hey, let's call the CEO a jerk this morning and why he has these certain tendencies. It was just a soft, easy way for a consultant colleague that was working there, was helping negotiate, and it worked out brilliantly. It just allowed people to see each other's perspectives for what they do when they're left to do it in their natural environment, the flow state. But what came up, which was really interesting, that company was growing really fast. So what came of that? Well, people start growing out of their roles. This is where you get the right people on the bus, to what Miguel's point is. But what happens when you get them on the right bus? Now they got to move seats. Not all people are going to be the people that got you to where you're at today might not be the people that are going to get you there tomorrow. They may be the wrong people because you may have raised your standards out of their zone of capabilities, or you might not be comfortable enough to just move them. We just saw infighting over these about 2,000 employees. Each department's wanted to keep their top talent, and their top talent's leaving the company left and right. And I'm like, oh, I've seen this countless times. They become siloed departments, and they want to protect their teams. So when they grow up to the top, the last thing you want to do is give up their top producer. But as a leader, you get to look at that and go, no, they're going to leave you anyhow, because if they're not growing, they're dying. If they're not progressing in some way, shape, or form, and they'll go take a pay cut in a department they helped pioneer 7 years ago, they're bored stiff. They leave your company and go to work for your competitor because they'll give them the free rein to do so. So that whole, getting them on the right people on the bus, but then moving the seats is not as flippantly easy as all people pretend it to be. But your leadership to be nimble, to be innovative in the midst of this type of trauma, if you guys are going to have any kind of negative effect on your profit margins here in the near future, I would restate what I just said because it sounded like rambling. I would say your EBITDA is going to be a direct reflection of your skills to navigate the uncertainty that's coming from this market. So if you've been doing really good and you've been anchoring down your certainty and you're locking down your policies and you've not been nearly as innovative, you're going to struggle. That's why so many people love the weather analogy and they call it the winter. They're saying, hey, it's just started. Like, it's just started. West Coast are like, it just started. It's a season. It's not a bad day. It's not a bad week. It's a weather pattern for a season. And statistically, citing the Russian economist that made most of this famous, that's about a 7-year stretch of a season. Statistically, that's not even talking about the end of a, world order of, whoever is going to be our backing our global economic situation, which is going to inevitably change, or maybe not. But, something's going to happen in the next 20 years significantly. We're going to see it. So even then, if all we're going to do is weather and say this is the winter season, well, it's so funny. I listened to some yahoos on YouTube because he was on YouTube. That meant he must be right. He goes, I love starting businesses in tough times. I'm like, I say to my what are you talking about? Sadomasochist? Like, you want to go plant your seed in the middle of winter? If you're growing your crops? Like, the best businesses are started right out of the season, spring. That's when it's most profitable to start a business. So as business owners, you have arbitrage at your fingertips. Have any of you guys considered just buying your direct competitors or your indirect competitors to more profitably expand your business without starting a new division or a new department? Any of you guys into buying businesses at all? Miguel does that, trains on that.
We've done that in the past.
Yeah. Do you know Roland Frazier by any chance?
Yes,
He was
I
that
do.
digital marketer.
Yeah, I know Roland.
So he's been talking about this for quite some time. I think he came out with his book. And I spoke at his mastermind, and he was talking a great deal about that years previous. And I think he's given it a lot more attention as of late, which is just the power, the strength of purchasing, maybe even segments of businesses that you want. So,
well, that's the difference between organic and natural growth,
yeah.
Which when I was at Paychex, Ted, we acquired a lot of businesses that way.
Yeah.
Why? Because the CPA community needed an exit strategy. It's such a simple yet brilliant strategy.
I was Brandon. He now works with Grant Cardone, and he 3 years ago started it. But we went to a fundraiser. He was speaking, and I'm looking at him. He's a neighbor and he's a client, or I mean, a old friend that I'd helped back when he was going through a thing, and but we haven't talked in ages. I didn't even know it was him up on stage talking. Like, I'm like, that's just some dude that works with Grant. Like, I didn't connect until I was on the plane flight home, and I was like, dude, that was you. I'm like, we didn't even do dinner. I was like, we live right next. I was like, I can't believe it. So anyhow, a great guy. And he's like, yeah, who would have known I would have gotten into this business? He too realized audiologists didn't really have an exit strategy and the power of it. And instead of, he came up with some really innovative models that gave a valuation that I had never seen before in the market for such a small company to be evaluated so high. He was able to accomplish that by giving them ownership in it. So when he did do a nice little exit, he was able to go around and cut out $45 million because of the model that it came with. I see a lot of companies doing really new creative models in this economic season to be effective. One of them is Big Block Realty. Another shout out to some friends of mine. They're in real estate, and they innovated by simply saying, we'll take no commissions. Remember how it used to be 3% if you're the realtor, and then 3% if you're the broker and you own the agency kind of thing? No, 100% goes to the real estate agent now. 100% commissions are being paid out. They charge their agents a membership fee to prove they're adding value. If we ever stop training you, if we ever stop making an environment to where it's the best environment you want to work in, leave us. By just stop paying us. Let your dollar do the speaking to it. Now, a couple of years ago, they got into franchising. Shout out to Roland Frazier. I think he gave them a lot of great strategic advice. They've been in their war room until the last war room happened last week. They'd been members. That was like, again, a paid mastermind that allowed people to get really good ideas, and they ended up franchising, and their franchisee in California is the 20th fastest growing company in all of America across the board, not just within their division, because they innovated something fresh. Just pay out 100%. There's so many great opportunities right now, but I wanted to talk about fundamentally raising standards because I think it's pretty simple. It is pretty fundamental. I was just surprised how goals and performance improvement plans have been ignored through the years. I pretty much haven't been talking to them because it felt very sophomoric. But every single client that's paying us through Business Mastery Transformation, and our coaches are evaluating them, they've gotten really, I'm hearing a big degree of lackadaisical natures to that. They just haven't raised their standards lately. If I could say anything at all about this economic condition we're in, is raise your freaking standards. As trite as that sounds, it's the best thing you can do to protect your profit margins. By the way, how helpful was any of that here today? There's just some, I got email from 3 different people that inspired me to want to share this today. How on point was it? Because it's a slightly different format from previous weeks.
That's great info. Absolutely.
Well, let's do this. What was the most valuable thing?
It was wonderful. I took 2 pages of notes.
Oh,
but I'm not positive that you answered Miguel's question, which is, how does he get 10% more in his funnel?
Oh, that's a different, you pay to get that through our Ultimate Business Breakthrough experience.
That's right. That's right. You got to go through magic door number 3.
You got to go through magic door number 3 to be able to get that. But that's not really what you were looking for. That was a hypothetical for a client, right? Did I read that right?
That was a hypo, correct. I just wanted to stimulate some conversation and give some target.
I appreciate it.
And you got a chance to talk about the SMART model. So excellent.
Yeah. Love it. All the old school fundamentals have been ignored. And I think it's just because the fall, it was good times. That's when you're out harvesting. That's where people get apathetic. And
that's right. You can be absolutely piss poor at execution and still make money.
Yeah, but that's if the weather has changed, my brother.
Correct.
Weather has changed. And if there are people that just haven't got that news flash yet, I'm just going to keep speaking it until they wake up, or not. And that's okay too, because not all businesses are going to succeed. But what was the single most valuable thing? Paul, out of everything we covered here today in the last closing few moments here, what was the most valuable thing for you, Paul?
I think maybe revisiting some of the structure of how I deal with not only the clients but the internal work people that work with me or for me.
Yeah.
Re-looking at that and maybe holding a little bit higher standard instead of kind of dropping my guard and saying it is what it is. I think that's pretty important right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Beautiful. What else? Single most valuable thing you picked up from here today?
Well, I thought what you said about the PIPs, the first step is love. And how did we fail to give you the training and support that you needed to be successful? So it's on us. And now we're going to give you the training. And then
That's right.
number
Leadership.
two,
Leaders go first. Yep.
and then number two, the training plus some kind of negative consequence. And then number three, it's up or out.
It's
I think that's pretty powerful. It's way easier to say than to do. But, you know, I had to pay Deloitte and Touche $85,000 to tell me to fire one of my $1 million clients because they were just sucking the life out of my team and we were actually losing money, right? So
I can't tell you how many times that story's been told. We all have to pay the price to do what we know we should do. Mine was $40,000 to Abraham. Yours was how much? 85? Oh, she broke up.
to Deloitte and Touche Consulting, right?
How much was it? You broke up.
85,000.
85. All right. Well, I've heard millions before.
All my mentors were paying McKinsey $1 million or more.
Yeah.
So I couldn't afford McKinsey, but I got Deloitte and they did that same kind of analysis on my company, a SWOT analysis, right? And that was it. They said, did you know you have the wrong COO? I said, no,
Yeah.
but he was gone within a year. And
Well, it took her a year, so that's good news.
we also terminated a couple of big clients that were more trouble than they were worth.
I think I'm going to have to raise my rates because at $36,000, we give that advice and I'll see them hang on to that wrong staff member for about 1.5 years until it's turned over. So maybe I'm going to have to raise my standards. Maybe just more pain will finally get them to do what they need to do. Well, I so appreciate you guys showing up, playing full out, participating, and just being a part of a community of business owners that share some of the greatest insights they've ever uncovered. You guys all care and share from that loving place.
Yeah.
You've
I
all
wanna show
checked
you
your
something,
egos at the
Rod.
door. The kitty cat. I saw the dog. Rod had a puppy.
We got Max.
Well, I hope to see you all next week. Blessings, y'all. Take care. Bye-bye
Thanks,
now.
Ted.
Bye.
Thank you.